Nepal, KP Sharma Oli. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First things first, given the recent spate of news surrounding the political situation in your country and involving your government, how would you describe the current political flux that seems to be engulfing the Nepal government, particularly the two main parties who are part of that government, the UML, which is your party, and Maoist Centre, which is Mr. Pushpakamal Dayal's party? They don't seem to be facing eye to eye on a number of issues.
Yeah, the situation is not so easy and not so complicated too. Because of the political situation heading towards instability, I recommended for dissolution of the parliament, particularly the House of Representatives, and declared the dates for new elections.
Correct.
But the Supreme Court gave a different verdict and restored the House of Representatives. So the situation again came back, and now the parliament is in session. But because of the developed circumstances, the major political party is split into two.
Correct.
It was unified by UML, the CPN UML and the Maoist Centre some 3 years before. But now, because of the verdict of the court, again, the two parties were separated in their former forms. They returned back. So the situation is something different and a little bit complicated. Of course, there are contradictions among the parties and between the party and inside the party. But even then, we have constitution, we have a democratic system, and within the constitution and within the framework of democratic systems, we will decide how to move ahead.
But Prime Minister, you referred to the Supreme Court decision, which is basically overturning the decision of your government, yourself, to dissolve the lower house of parliament and face fresh elections, which many saw the Supreme Court's decision to make a U-turn on your move as a blow to you personally. Do you feel that your legal team, your lawyers, were not able to convince the court about the rationale for calling for fresh elections? And if so, why?
Yeah, of course. When the Supreme Court decided something else than my recommendation to dissolve the House of Representation, and the House was House of Representative was restored, then I must accept that my side was not able to convince the Supreme Court to give verdict in my favor or in my recommendations favor. But this is a constitutional process and democratic process. This is the action and this is the practice within the constitution and the democratic framework. So this is nothing new, exactly speaking. The House of Representatives is restored again, and it will go ahead, and it will decide according to the political forces present inside the House of Representatives and their policies
Prime Minister,
and their decisions.
But Prime Minister Oli, how do you foresee the immediate political future of your government? Because many are saying that the differences between the two main parties, which is UML, your party, and Maoist Centre, which is Mr. Dayal's party, have become too grave and too big and perhaps even irreconcilable. What is your assessment? How long will your government last? Will you be left with no choice but to go back to the people and face elections again?
It returned back about 3 years before situation, and I had I got support from the Mao Center at that time.
Yeah.
And when two parties came back again in their own positions, then I have the support of the Maoist Center until now. And if they uh, uh, again take back their support, then the situation will be different. But the political parties and forces are active for different options. In my opinion, my government will continue, or the election will take place again.
But do you feel, Prime Minister Oli, that you were betrayed by some members of your own party, your own government, in that decision to go back to the people and ask for fresh elections? Do you feel let down by your own coalition?
Of course, in the past, particularly last year, the political scenario was very unhealthy because of the internal conflict of the friends of my party. Inside my party, there was problem, and there was indisciplined, anarchist activities. There were, and the consequences were that the situation developed in the present state.
No, but let's talk about from the domestic political crisis there that you're battling to some regional diplomacy questions, because here in India, and India is of course one of the closest neighbors and partners of Nepal, and you'd appreciate that. But here in India, particularly in the last few years, there is a perception that your government is too close to China. Particularly when it comes to infrastructure projects, whether it is rail projects or dam projects and many such infrastructure projects which the Chinese are building in your country. Could you please clarify on this point, if nothing else, to reassure the Indian public that Nepal's ties with India under your leadership are just as what they used to be before, and that India has no reason to worry because of this perceived closeness between your country and China?
In my opinion, there should not be any type of doubt or confusion on the question of the friendly ties, friendly relationship between our two countries, Nepal and India. So far, the question of going closer to China, we have two neighbors. We have two giant neighbors in both sides, and we have very good and friendly relationship with both of our neighbors. And geopolitical situation of our country and the friendliness that our neighbors are showing towards us, it of course brings us equally closer to both of our neighbors. Both of our neighbors are equally close to us.
Okay.
And so far, the investment and other things of our northern neighbor China, of course, both neighbors have investment in Nepal, and we welcome investment of all other countries also, other friendly countries also, and why we do not welcome the investment, etc., of our neighbors, immediate neighbors.
Okay.
So, of course, there are investments from north and south. We welcome both of them.
How would you describe, Prime Minister, the current state of the relationship between Kathmandu and New Delhi, particularly in the context of COVID-19 and the pandemic-induced lockdown that we've seen through much of 2020, and now in 2021, what many are calling vaccine diplomacy? I believe that India has sent about 1 million or so doses of the vaccine to your country as well. So how would you describe the current state of the India-Nepal bilateral relationship?
in my opinion, I want to correct your one word, that is vaccine diplomacy. I don't think that the vaccine donated to us by India is not a matter of diplomacy. It's not a question of diplomacy, but it's a question of matter of friendship between our two countries.
Okay.
So India, as a friendly neighbor, donated us 1 million vaccine doses, and we bought other second round of vaccines from India we bought. So this is not the question of diplomacy, but it's question of friendship.
But Prime Minister Oli, particularly given how tumultuous this past year has been in the context of Corona and countries going into lockdown as a consequence of that, how would you see bilateral relations itself changing among countries, and particularly here in South Asia, because we're still in the developing world. Many of our economies have gone into a tailspin as a consequence of Corona and the lockdown thereof. How do you see bilateral relations in South Asia? Do you see it getting better because this disease has taught us that we have no other choice but to come together, pool resources, and as Prime Minister Modi keeps saying, the world has to be one family, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam?
COVID-19 pandemic, which is suffering entire world and disturbing the social order and social systems, and as well as economically, it is damaging in different all over the world, and this has given a lesson to the world that we have to work together, we have to live together, and we have to work together. And most often the problems are common, and if the situation deteriorates, then we are compelled to work together, come closer, and support each other. So we have to develop our thinking, we have to change our thinking towards internationalized standard from a humanitarian feeling, and thus though the COVID-19 is a very harmful thing, but it gave us a lesson, and it taught us that we have to work together, and bilateral relation, trilateral relation, regional and multilateral or a global relationship between the countries and the society are now in better position.
Okay.
And we have to develop these ties again.
I want to come back to something that you had mentioned briefly in one of the earlier questions, and that is the question of China and Chinese investments in infrastructure projects. It's not just Nepal that's seeing that. In South Asia itself, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, many countries are realizing that the debt that comes with Chinese investment becomes unsustainable in the long term. Particularly, we're seeing that in Sri Lanka. Are you worried about the level of debt financing that some of these big ticket projects that the Chinese are investing in Nepal?
Exactly, I do not think like that, because we are concentrating our efforts on our economic development endeavors, and we want investment from outside in different forms, in forms of donation, in forms of loans, in form of different type of investment, joint venture, etc. Our efforts are not enough ourselves, and we need work together with our development partners.
Okay.
And internationally, development partners are cooperating us and working together with us. And so far, the question of investment of China or loan of China, this is not an alarming stage, and this is not that sort of thing that we can, people are talking about debt draft, etc.
Yeah.
But that is not the situation in the case of Nepal. So we want to invite other countries also for investment and to provide donation to Nepal. And we donate in the field of job opportunities, creating job opportunities, and increasing production. So this will not be like debt trap, and we don't think that sort of situation is in Nepal, and we have to be worried about all these things.
Let me round off with the last couple of questions. Your country, Nepal, was the previous rotating chair of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, or SARC. We've not had a SARC summit for a number of years now, even before COVID-19. Do you foresee a SARC summit happening in 2021 as we come out of COVID-19, this global pandemic and the lockdown? And do you see the current rotating chair of SARC, Pakistan, being in a position to host a summit this year?
In my opinion, SARC was established in a time when all of SARC countries thought that it is necessary to establish a regional organization which will be instrumental for exchange opinions, ideas, and share opportunities, and work together for common challenges, to defeat common challenges, to meet common challenges. Sure. And similarly, it contributed to some extent, though we cannot express our satisfaction that with the work of SARC, but it worked positively, and the contribution of SARC are positive. But now, because of our neighbors, our members of the SARC countries, due to their misunderstanding, the SARC is not that much effective and is not being able to hold a summit. In the past, about 2 years before, we had to. But I am hopeful that we have to, now we have to restart the SARC process, and we have to organize the summit. And we, as we are chairperson, and we want to give this responsibility to others after the summit.
I want to come back to another issue that cropped up recently in ties between New Delhi and Kathmandu, and that is the issue of differences on the map on 3 particular locations, Kalapani, Lipu Lake, and Limpiadura. Is that chapter over? Have those differences between India and Nepal been sorted out?
The talks have been started and going on. So I believe that the problem will be resolved through the dialogues, and on the basis of truth and facts, and on the basis of given proofs and historical realities and backgrounds. So through dialogue, we can resolve this problem.
All right. Final word. India and Nepal, of course, have a bond of friendship that goes many, many centuries. Perhaps one of the few 2 large countries that have open and porous borders, many millions who, live in one country or hail from one country, work in the other. How do you see relations between our 2 people progressing as we come out of this COVID-19 year and as we get back to a semblance of normalcy in our daily lives?
Of course, we have, as you mentioned, that we have unique type of relationship, because we have cultural, historical, since since
centuries,
time
yes.
immemorial perhaps, historical, and there are so many dimensions, so many aspects of our relationship and friendly ties. So during this pandemic also, our friendly ties were more stronger, more closer, more tightened, and we cooperated each other to control this pandemic. So during this time or before, our friendly ties are developing gradually on the basis of reality,
Okay,
and mutual benefit and mutual respect.
all right. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli of Nepal, thank you very much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18 in what has been one of your first interviews to a major Indian news network. Thank you indeed for your time. There you have it. That entire special interview goes up on our website, news18.com, and all our social media handles from YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time, for another episode of Prostax.